may run over slightly, and that's at my discretion, or it may not. It is basically broken down into 3 sections. The planning officer that's dealing with the case will present first of all, and then we will move to the evidence being presented by the applicant and agent. They have a time slot of 20 minutes. I've allowed 15 to 20 minutes for the planning officer to present. After the applicant and agent have presented, there will be an opportunity of roughly the same time slot for committee members to ask questions of the applicant and agents, after which I'll draw that to a close, and we will move on to those objectors to the application that have requested speaking rights. We had a number of applications for speaking rights, and to work within the time slot of 20 minutes, some of the applicants have agreed to have one speaker speak for them jointly. That said, I still have 7 slots to work within the 20 minutes, and I'm speaking now directly to the objectors. I have you in order, and I will be called upon you in order. I will be sticking strictly to the time allocated to each of you, and I will be asking the operators of the system to mute you automatically at the end of your slot. I'll give you a 30-second heads up to say that I wish you to conclude with regard to your presentations, and I'll move on automatically. The running order, and I'll outline it now, is Ciara McGriskin first, Michael Collins second, Jonathan Stiles third, Glyn Roberts fourth, Christine Reeves fifth, speaking on behalf of Ironside, 6, Michael Graham, and 7, Rodney Shaw. Again, I would emphasise to those objectors, I will be cutting you off automatically and moving on to the next allocated speaker, working within the time slot. At the end of that period, again, the committee will have the opportunity to ask questions, again, up to about 20 minutes. And to round up, after that, the applicant and the agents have the right of rebuttal for 5 to 10 minutes to actually address any issues raised by the objectors, but there will be no opportunity for the committee to ask any questions at that stage. I'll then go on to get the planning office comments to round up, and there may be some discussion in regard to those by the committee at the end. I would try and work to keep this within 2 hours, and that'll be at the end. Now I'm going to address, sorry, I think I have an issue with my headset, hold on. This is any better? Okay, you can hear me now. Such is technology at the moment. I'm going to address some comments to the committee to make them aware of what's going on. Some of you have never had the opportunity to come to a predetermination hearing. The object of this hearing for members is to gain information. It is not to offer comments in regard to the application, and it's purely a fact-finding issue. If you do make comments, it may rule you out of actually sitting on the committee to actually determine the application in December. So with that note of caution, I'm advising members, if they do indicate and come in using the hands up system, which I will monitor going through, it is to ask questions, not to offer comment at this stage. Okay. That said, I would ask everybody to mute themselves, please, and only those that are speaking should unmute themselves and go forward. Thank you very much. I know it is a bit formulaic, but I want to ensure that the proper procedure is adhered to and that we can get through the hearing as best as possible. So that said, I'm going to hand over now to Paul McDermott, the case officer in charge, and he will do his presentation in regard to the application. Paul.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Welcome to the predetermination hearing. The application is LA10 2019 1392F, and the proposal is a mixed-use retail and leisure development comprising 5 retail units, garden centres, 1 indoor adventure play unit, hotel, cinema, bowling alley, drive-through restaurant, self-service pay at the pump station, car park, coffee pod, and there's 2 accesses, one from the Carnagrade Road and Irvin, and the other from the Irvinstown Road and associated site works. The location is lands of the former Unipork site, to the east of Carnagrade Road, to the west of the Irvinstown Road, and to the north of the Kilmacormick and Hillview residential developments. The applicant is Elm Grange Limited. So members, this is the site location plan, and it just shows the extent of the site outlined in red. And you'll see the Carnagrade Road to the west and the Irvinstown Road there to the east. Donnelly's car garage is annotated with a purple star, and as raised by NA Water, there's a wastewater treatment system adjoining the site, and that's annotated by the yellow star. So this is an aerial image of the application site. Again, the extent of the site is outlined in red. And you can see from the aerial image that there's been levelling and excavation works on site and the creation of an access. The proposal proposes 2 accesses, one from the Carnagrade Road and one from the Irvinstown Road, both annotated their approximate locations with the purple arrows. So this is the photo of the application site from the Carnagrade Road. The application site there is on the right-hand side. This is a photo of the application site from the Irvinstown Road. And you can see the application site is on the left-hand side and well elevated above road level. So just moving on then to look at the layout of the development, and this is the block plan. You can see the location of the 2 accesses. Carnagrade Road identified with a purple star and Irvinstown Road identified by the yellow star. The adjoining properties along the Irvinstown Road, one of which has objected to the proposal, is circled in red. So as one comes in through the Carnagrade access, the petrol station will be on the right-hand side and the hotel on the left-hand side. The bowling alley and cinema will be straight ahead. And as you continue on in then, the coffee pod will be in the central sort of location within the site. And Unit 6 in the indoor adventure area will be on the right. The remaining retail units then sort of laid out in a U-style format, with parking to the central areas of the site. Coming in off the Irvinstown Road then, you can branch off left, which is a service road, and that runs up along the perimeter with Hillview Road and Kilmacormick housing development. If you're coming off the Irvinstown Road and continuing into the site, and as you continue on in, you'll come to the drive-through restaurant, which is on the left-hand side, and the bowling alley and cinema, which is on the right-hand side. Just to show members some elevations from the yellow star here, which would be the central central portion of the site looking towards units 1 to 4. And the top elevation is the elevation that would be seen looking towards the car park. 4 units, roughly about 10 metres in height. They'll be finished in a kingspan panel, snowdrift white, and vertical clad into the entrance doors. And the bottom elevation there is the rear elevation, and that'll be facing Hillview and Cormac residential developments. So this is the floor plan, members, and you'll see the layout of the 4 units. There's an internal link between Unit 1 and the garden centre. Unit 1 and Unit 2 is just over 2,000 square metres each, and Unit 3 and 4 is 1,000 square metres each. So just moving on then to look at an elevation from the central parking area again at the yellow star looking towards units 5 and 6. And this is the 3D visual of unit 5. And that'll be the view from the central parking area. So unit 5 and unit 6, this is the floor plan. Again, the garden centre is internally linked with unit 5. Unit 5 is the largest of the units. It's 3,284 square metres. And unit 6, the adventure play area, is 1,000 square metres. And just going to show members as well a photo montage from the Cormac Grade Road looking towards the site. And this will be the photo montage from the Cormac Grade Road looking towards the site, units 5 and 6, and you can see the pedestrian links from the Cormac Grade Road and the landscaping. So just to take members through the rest of the details within the site, and we'll start initially with a coffee pod, which is located in the central portion of the site. So this is a 3D visual of the coffee pod from the front elevation. The coffee pod building's approximately about 4 metres in height. External walls are finished in brick and clad into the upper section with the trocal flat roof. So this is the floor plan of the coffee pod. Access is annotated to the building there with a yellow star and arrow. You'll come into the building and the customer seating will be the first thing, and then the counter and servery will be further on the right hand side. So moving on to the drive-through, which also occupies a sort of central portion in the site, and it's highlighted there by the red circle. So these are the elevations of the drive-through restaurant. Again, the building's 4 metres in height. It's going to be finished in brick walls and clad into the upper section. You see the top elevation, top left elevation there is the front elevation, and it's a long rectangular building. There's access from the front elevation and one access from the side elevation. So this is the floor plan of the drive-through restaurant. You can see the 2 entrances to the building annotated with arrows, and that brings you into the customer seating area, again with the counter and kitchen prep then further on in. It's a long rectangular layout of a building. So moving on then to the bowling alley and the cinema, which is the closest element of development to the Irvinstown Road properties. It's circled there again on the red. So this is a 3D visual of the bowling alley and cinema as you access the development from the Cormac Grade Road. You can see that the access to the building is centrally located there on the visual, and the cinema is on the left-hand side and the bowling alley is on the right-hand side. Cinema It's going to be finished in a profiled dark cladding, and the bowling alley is going to be finished the external brick walls, and the roof finish for both will be a trocal flat roof. Overall, the building height there ranges from 5 to 7 meters, with a central totem sign approximately 15.5 meters. So this is the floor plan of the building. You can see the entrance again, centrally located, and takes you in to the main lobby, reception area. You can turn right then into the 8-lane bowling alley, which is around 896 square meters. And from the main lobby, you can turn left then down into the cinema. It's a 5-screen cinema, and approximately the same size, 895 square meters. So moving on then to the hotel development, which occupies the most northerly portion of the site, prominent position overlooking the roundabout, circled in red. So this is a 3D visual of the hotel and restaurant, again, from the approach on the Corner Grade Road. You can see there's 2 elements to the building, single story, where the restaurant is, and the accommodation then is over 3 stories. The height of the 3-story building is approximately 13.6 meters, and the single stories just over 5 meters. The finishes will be a brick to the external walls, and white render, and standing seam zinc. This is the floor plan of the single-story building, and you can see quite a bit of seating for the restaurant and bar area, 100+ seats, and an external terrace there which overlooks the roundabout. There's an internal access to the accommodation, and that's shown there with arrow. This is the ground floor plan of the accommodation building, and it shows the sort of layout and design of the accommodation. Standard sort of layout. You've got your double beds and 2 single beds, all with ensuite bedrooms. And this it's a 54-bedroom hotel, and it's over 3 floors. So this is a 3D visual of the restaurant and hotel from the roundabout, and you can see the restaurant on the terrace there, occupying the prominent position. So moving on into the petrol station, which will be one of the first parts of the development that you'll meet coming in off the Corner Grade Road on the right-hand side, again circled with the red circle. Standard sort of design and layout here of the petrol station. 6 islands, 12 bays, approximately 6 meters in height. So just to take members through, this is the photograph of the properties from the Irvinstown Road. 94 Irvinstown Road there, starred with a yellow. There's been a representation received from the property, and you can see the site and at the rear on the other side of those conifer trees. So just going to show members a photograph that's taken within the site, approximate location of the yellow star, looking back towards the bowling alley and the properties in the Irvinstown Road. So you can see the site's quite elevated above the Irvinstown Road, which is on the right-hand side, and the properties there in the background, annotated by the yellow star. So one of the key issues with the application is the location outside the town centre boundary. This is an extract from the Fermanagh area plan, which shows the location of the site in comparison to the town centre boundary, and it's approximately 1.1 kilometres away. As a result, there's been a full sequential assessment done by the agent of alternative sites. And that's looked at the town centre and the various opportunity sites and policy areas that you can see. The town centre here is annotated by the outer black line, and the primary retail core, which runs from Belmore Street in the east to Church Street in the west, is annotated by the 2 red circles. So we'll just take members through some of the sites that has been considered and give them a flavour for some of the sites that has been considered by the agent within a sequential assessment. This is the Station Green development. There's 2 approvals here. L 2012-0341F for 3 units, 3 retail units, and L 2012-0452, which is 1 unit. And there's also office and residential accommodation on the upper floors. This is a photograph of the L 2012-0452 site. It's a green area, including the shed, which is indicated by the arrow. This is a photograph of the other Station Green site, the L 2012-0341. And this is the elevation of that same approved development. You can see the layout of the 3 retail units there, which will be facing the car park. So former TP Topping site is another site that's been considered, and it forms a small part of policy area P3. Other sites that have been considered is the soon-to-be vacant Southwest College and the PSNI site, which was identified within the Enniskillen Master Plan for redevelopment, and also the soon-to-be vacant Devonish College. In terms of the retail impact then, retail impact on the town centre, another one of the key issues. The applicant in their retail statement has identified a solus impact on the comparison goods within the town centre of -8% and a total impact on the overall town centre of -7%. And the objectors then sort of ranging in total impact from 10 to 17%. And back to Chair with the agenda.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that. Just something I forgot to do in my introduction, and this is purely for committee members. Do I have any apologies and any declarations of interest? If you raise your hands. Nope. Thank you very much for that. We'll go on now to the presentation by the applicant and agent. 2 gentlemen have actually indicated that they will be speaking, and that there will be 5 sort of consultants in the background who can take any questions that are directed in regard to technical issues by the committee members. But if David Elvin and Eamon Lockery could introduce themselves, please, and unmute. You have 20 minutes, gentlemen, to present, and then I'll move on to questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm David Elvin, Queen's Counsel. I'm instructed just to address one specific issue that's been raised by objectors with regard to the sequential approach to assist councillors in reaching their decision in due course. I should say I'm a member of the Bar of Northern Ireland and have been for many years. I'm also a member of the Bar of England and Wales, and I've got cross-jurisdictional experience in retailing both in Northern Ireland and in England. The objectors have raised an issue with regard to the sequential approach, which has just been presented to you by the officer, which says that essentially the SPPS, particularly paragraph 6289, which is set out on page 9 of the officer's predetermination report, requires that you consider the sequential approach, and those other sites that have been summarised for you this morning should be looked at in terms of taking apart the proposals, disaggregating them, and fitting them piece by piece on much smaller sites. That is not an approach which we say is supported by the SPPS. and various points have been made, particularly by Erin's side, with regard to the proper approach to be taken to the SPPS policy, which is to be interpreted legally correctly, and the courts have said, the Supreme Court has said, policy determination is a matter of law. Its application is a matter for you, of course, applying your own views and your own judgments to the policy. Our simple position is that looking at the SPPS 6289, as I say, correctly stated, indeed verbatim, on page 9 of your predetermination report, says flexibility may be adopted in seeking to accommodate developments onto sites. Applicants will be expected to demonstrate, I'm just taking the first and last bit, applicants will be expected to identify and fully demonstrate why alternative sites are not suitable, available and viable. Now, similar form of wordings are applicable not only in Northern Ireland, but in Scotland and in England. And the same parallel approach has been adopted across those three jurisdictions. And the essential point, which was decided by the Supreme Court in a case called Tesco and Dundee, which is referred to in the papers and in the predetermination report, is when you're looking at the issue of suitability, it means, are those sites suitable for the proposed development? Not are they suitable for any form of retail development, however small or however inconvenient for the proposals, but are they suitable for the proposals that are in front of you? Now, the requirement for flexibility doesn't mean that a developer is entitled to have its own way with regard to every aspect. When assessing the alternative sites, the developer should look flexibly at whether adjustments could be made to the proposals in order to make them work with regard to those sites which are closer to the town centre or in the town centre. However, as the Supreme Court made clear in Tesco, this doesn't require you to disaggregate the proposals, take them apart perhaps into many smaller elements, just because you could fit individual units or a few individual units on specific sites in the town centre is not required. What's important to note is in Northern Ireland, whether it was in the old PPS 5 or even in the draft PPS that the Lord Chief Justice quashed some years ago, or in the SPPS, Northern Ireland policy has not required disaggregation at any stage. And indeed, it was present in England for a number of years in the English PPS 4, which was the equivalent to the old PPS 5 here. And it had a specific policy requiring in clear terms disaggregation. That was found to be problematic. It was very unpopular, difficult to apply, because how far did you go with it? And in fact, the English policymakers abandoned it in 2012, 8 years ago, for a form of words which looks very similar to the formula in the SPPS. Scotland has a rather more detailed policy, or had in the Tesco case, but it came to the same conclusion. Flexibility still has to be looked at in the light of what is proposed by the developer. Now, various points have been made, particularly by Erin's side. They've referred you to some statements of Scottish policy and the view of the Supreme Court on specific statements of Scottish policy about disaggregation or looking at taking sites apart. However, bear in mind that that was in the context of a rather more detailed policy in Scotland than here, as the retail response documents have made clear. And even more importantly, when you look at the actual result in Tesco and Dundee, what the Supreme Court said was it wasn't, the sites in the town centre were not big enough to accommodate the development proposals, even taking a view of flexibility. And that was a right approach to the policy, and it didn't meet those requirements. That is the same here. Mr. Lockery will go through the details if council members need further information on the specific sites, but you haven't got a site which approaches the necessary size to accommodate these proposals. Erin's side also refer you to a decision called Hull, which is a single decision by a planning inspector, i.e. equivalent to the PAC here. It's not a decision that was made by government, by the Secretary of State, and the decision by the planning inspector in the Hull case relied upon Erin's side. I say two things about it. Members shouldn't be misled, in my respectful submission. because firstly, it was dealing with the specific circumstances in Hull at the time. It wasn't dealing with the issue broadly. But secondly, it got Tesco wrong because it didn't look at the complete approach, and it ignored what Mr. Justice Ouseley said, applying the same policy in a case called Aldergate, where he said, and if council officers would find it helpful, we can send through a copy of Aldergate. He said that suitable, as applied by Tesco, meant suitable for the broad type of development which is proposed by approximate size, type and range of goods. So it must be broadly suitable. So you can ask for some flexibility and some adjustment, but not completely shredding the proposals and requiring them to be split up into many individual component parts. And the inspector in Hull misunderstood Aldergate, and it's fair to say it hasn't attracted any great deal of support, either by the courts or by the Secretary of State, the minister making the more important decisions, and is very much out on a limb. And in fact, the one Secretary of State decision, Mr. Lockry's referred you to it in the retail responses, is a case called Rushton Lakes, where the Secretary of State took exactly the same approach, which we say ought to be taken here, which is, unless there are clear words requiring you to disaggregate, shred the proposals into multiple elements and try and put them on smaller sites within the town centre, unless that's there in clear words, then you shouldn't read it into this sort of policy. You can't, therefore, in our case, simply take the very straightforward words of the SPPS at 6289 and read in the sort of words that Erenside and some of the other objectors want. They're trying to lead you up the garden path, if I can put it that way, and lead you to make an error of law. And we say that that approach is wrong, and the Scottish and the English policy versions give you the way, as does the Supreme Court, who tell you in many cases, including a case called Hopkins Holmes, that you should adopt a common sense approach to policy and shouldn't approach it as if you were construing some sort of commercial contract, as Erenside appears to do. So, members, that's our position on disaggregation and the sequential test. And I'll now hand over, unless anyone has any questions for me, to Mr. Lockry.
Sorry, we're going to take questions at the end. If Eamon, you could come in and just introduce yourself. We'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
I'll be here throughout.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Eamon Lockry. I'm the planning consultant for the application. The crux of the application is retail policy compliance. There are three elements to this, being the sequential test, the need assessment, and the retail impact assessment. The Uniport factory site is a significant 6.6 hectare brownfield site located less than a mile north of Enniskillen town centre that has been vacant for more than a decade. It is an out-of-centre site and is accessible by public transport. The applicant seeks to provide a mixed-use, bulky retail warehouse and leisure complex, providing 5 retail units, indoor leisure play facility, hotel, cinema, bowling alley, drive-through, coffee shop, PFS and parking. It will be anchored by the Range and Movie Bowl, Brunswick Movie Bowl. Both have provided letters of support. Economic benefits of this application are 15.5 million capital expenditure, 150 construction jobs, 350 new operational jobs, about £600,000 in rates per annum, and about £3.5 million in salary to the local economy. Planning history has previously been found that the site has been previously been found suitable for retail development of about 1,330 square metres, previously providing 9 retail units, including a superstore and non-food retail warehousing and garden centre. A subsequent application under Article 28 was granted to vary this permission in 2012. So planning history is a material consideration that the Council must have regard to and give appropriate weight in its judgment. In this case, it is clear that the scale of development previously approved on this site was significant and it was found acceptable, and that there would be no harmful retail impact and no alternative sites closer to the town centre that could accommodate the development. The current application before the committee today is slightly smaller in retail terms than that previously approved, but includes a wider mix of uses and utilises the full Uniport site. Before submitting the application, we consulted the Council and sought to understand whether alternative sequentially preferable sites existed. We have thoroughly assessed and considered all development opportunity sites in the area plan, all policy areas in the area plan, sites highlighted in the Enniskillen master plan, and we have identified sites ourselves. We've looked at 17 sites in total initially. We've also looked at further 7 highlighted by the objectors. None of the sites are large enough to accommodate the proposal, even applying flexibility required by the SPPS. A number of development opportunity sites are redeveloped. Many are not available as they are already occupied. A main site contended for by objectors is Station Green. It's a former industrial land which has permission for 3 retail units which can accommodate 4,693 square metres of floor space. This is too small to accommodate the proposal. It relies on council car parking at Hollyhill Crescent, which is 418 spaces fewer than proposed. It has permission in front of the car park for McCulloch's fuel store to be developed as a 5-storey development providing retailing over 3 floors. This scheme is on a cramped site and proposes triple-level retailing in an awkward configured site, which is not suitable for retail warehousing, even allowing for flexibility. It does not have direct access to the car park. In retail terms alone, ignoring the hotel, cinema, bowling alley, this development is too small and is designed for fashion retailing, not bulky retail goods. Combining the floor space at Station Green approval provides at most 8,000 square metres of floor space, and that's still 33% smaller than that sought by this application. So despite suggestions by objectors, there is no primary retail core town centre site or edge of town centre site suitable and available for this development. In terms of need, case law shows that this is a protean factor and can vary. There are many ways of looking at it. The proposal will be anchored by the range. They have identified a need for the new sub-regional store to cover the southwest. Brunswick Movie Bowl have confirmed that they need a presence in the southwest area. The council's own retail assessments by Tom Phillips and Nexus have both found increased growth in spending in Fermanagh and Omagh, which needs to be accommodated. Tom Phillips found a need to accommodate 4,000 to 7,000 square metres of comparison floor space in Enniskillen between 2010 and 2018. Nexus found growth in spending of 58 million between 2016 and 2025. While short-term growth may have altered by the current pandemic, we anticipate that in the next 3 to 5 years, by the time the scheme is developed, retail demand and growth will rebound. Growth in spending can be either assumed to support increased turnover of established shops in Enniskillen, or can be allocated to accommodate additional shops. In the latter case, there is a clearly quantitative need for this proposal. Moreover, Nexus also found outflow of spending to locations such as Belfast, Omagh, Derry and the Republic of Ireland, and estimate an outflow of spending of 22 million. There is a need to reduce this outflow. Enniskillen does not have a modern retail warehouse park designed for bulky goods retailers. Such parks are successful in Newry, Coleraine, Bangor and Derry. They have sub-regional and cross-border draw. Providing this proposal will be a qualitative improvement to shopping offer in Enniskillen. As such, there is a clear quantitative and qualitative need for this proposal. In retail impact terms, the approach has been to adopt data and in terms of catchment market shares from the council's own consultants, Nexus, and to update this with current population and spend per head rates. The proposal will have a turnover of 2 million. Enniskillen has a total turnover of about 204 million. The proposal will divert 42% of its turnover from Enniskillen Town Centre and 53% overall of its turnover from Enniskillen as a total. In total, 37% of the turnover of the money will be diverted from leakage from Fermanagh, which is heading to the Republic of Ireland and other parts of Northern Ireland, and 9% of the proposal's trade will be drawn into the area. Applying these key assumptions, we estimate a solus impact of 8% and a combined impact on the town centre of 7%. When Station Green is added to the development or to the opening of the town centre, this reduces impact down to about 2%. It can be noted that even if the proposal's total trade was diverted from the town centre, there would only be an impact of 16%. Objectors estimate retail impacts of between 10 and 14%. As such, the evidence before the council is the worst case retail impact of between 8 and 14%. Enniskillen is overall strong and healthy town centre, and this range of impact levels are not harmful. In retail policy terms, Enniskillen Town Centre or any other town centre, this proposal will not harm Enniskillen Town Centre or any other town centre, and as such, the proposal complies with IDCOM 3, S3 and TC1 of the plan. There is no policy conflict with the Omagh area plan either. The proposal complies with the SPPS as the proposal does not have adverse impact. It will not impact on the delivery of any planned or allocated development opportunity sites. It will not affect the diversity of the town centre. It does not have harmful cumulative impact, and it has local economic benefits. Station Green may contest that this proposal will deter their investment. However, it is a matter for the council to decide whether the impact on Station Green, which has had planning for 5 years and was designed and applied for in the full knowledge of the potential at Uniport site, would be developed as grounds to refuse the application. We consider this is not sound grounds to refuse, as Station Green cannot accommodate the scale of this proposal, and that part of this development is designed for fashion retailing, and as such will be unaffected by the proposal, and the fact the site has not come forward before now indicates that it is not attractive to bulky goods retailers. It is a matter of judgment for the Planning Committee whether to refuse a major application with confirmed tenants in the range and Brunswick Movie Bowl and significant economic benefits on the basis of an alternative, distinguishable and different retail scheme which is not suitable to accommodate the proposal and which might alleged to be deterred from being built out. PPS 4 deals with economic development in terms of retention of former industrial land. The site is unzoned from an area plan. It has been approved for development for non-industrial uses, including retail and residential use 3 times. Significantly, the 2012 permission postdates the adoption of PPS 4, and as such, there is a general acceptance that the proposal can be used for other forms of development. Traffic is largely agreed, subject to detailed design of off-site highway works. PPS 16 tourism policy, TSM1, and FAP policy, T3, allows tourism development within the settlement, and as such, the hotel is compliant with this policy. There is no statutory objection to this application on ecology, contamination, archaeology, flood and drainage, noise, odour, dust, air quality, or habitats. And overall, we consider this major investment proposal will deliver significant benefits to Enniskillen and is compliant with the area plan and regional policy, and that it should be allowed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Eamon. You've finished within your slot. I'll now open the floor to committee members. You have up to 15 to 20 minutes, members, to pose any questions either to David or Eamon, or indeed to the range of consultants who are sitting in the background to answer any specific questions. Councillor Smith, Chris.
Thanks very much, Chair. Can you hear me? Yep. Sure. Yeah. Just I want to ask Eamon. You mentioned when you were talking about demonstration of need. You mentioned I'm assuming that modelling was done before COVID, and you mentioned that you didn't. You expected spending. Expected spending power to return to previous levels. Do you have any evidence to support that?
That the retail spending will rebound?
Well, yeah, I used the word rebound.
Yeah, I used the word rebound. I don't think anybody would have any evidence as to what the future will hold at the end of when the pandemic comes through. So in terms of actual evidence, no, what we have seen, I think what we've seen anecdotally is that 3 things have happened in terms of bulky goods. During the lockdown, people stopped spending money because the shops were forced to close. But what has then subsequent happened has been a lot of people spending money on home improvements, and that's the sort of type of retailers that we propose for this development. And additionally to that, we've seen, not that it's relevant to this application in terms of the occupiers, but we've seen people continue to spend on convenience goods, increased levels on convenience goods. And so the ability to spend money and the drop in turnovers that's happened as a result of COVID is not a result of a lack of demand from the population to want to buy and purchase things and purchase food or upgrade their homes. It's been a result of a pandemic, and I don't have any direct evidence, but I don't see any reason to think that people will not decide to shop in future.
Chair, if you'll allow me a supplementary. Just so in very broad terms, you are content that those figures are still up, that modelling exercise is still appropriate?
In broad terms, yes. In broad terms, yes. Again, as I say, the pandemic changes things on a daily basis. And the different government initiatives have changed people's spending patterns in the short term. But in the broad term, in the longer term, and people talk about what the benefits of the vaccine will be and how people will want to get back to normal. sometime in 2021, I would be confident that when this development is ultimately determined, and if the committee choose to approve it, that when this development is actually being built and opened, and there's a time lag in there too, to bear in mind that it'll be probably 2021 before the committee's obviously going to make a determination on this. And then there'll be a time lag of at least a year before you would even be able to be looking at getting things in shape for opening. So you might be looking at 2022, 2023 for opening of stores.
Okay. Well, thanks, Chair. That's my questions for Eamon.
Thanks very much, Chris. Eamon, just for a matter of information, I think this application is scheduled to come before the committee next month in December. So hopefully, I think there will be proper time allocated. The committee should be able to come to some sort of determination at our committee meeting in December, the way the schedule is set up. I would hope that we don't keep you too long after that. Members, any other indications in regard to questions to either gentleman or indeed their consultants that are sitting physically and metaphorically in the background waiting for questions? I'm taking that I see no further indications in regard to questions, that you're happy enough with the information provided and the information already in the report. I'll just ask again, any questions? No, that's fair enough. You still have the opportunity at the end to address any comments to our planning officer, so should you so require. I'm now going on to representations from the objectors, and as I said, I have 7 listed speakers with a time allocation to work within the 20 minutes. I'm now going to call upon the first speaker, Ciara McGrithkin, and before I allow you in, Ciara, again, I'm going to be very strict in regard to the timing so that this doesn't drag on. I will give you an indication roughly, just coming up to 30 seconds to actually wind up, and then I'm automatically going to cut you off and move on to the next speaker, and I'm doing that for everybody. So it's not just a case of a favour. So, Ciara, you're up now. You have got 3 minutes.
We, as owners of Station Green, have invested substantially in our town centre by purchasing a brownfield derelict site and getting planning approval for 84,000 square foot of open class retail consent. Our planning is live and our site is ready for development today. Station Green satisfies the first criteria of the sequential test applied by the SPPS policy. We are within the town centre boundary. Our site is located on the east side of Enniskillen and is neighboured by a number of vacant sites, which when combined together can accommodate everything this out-of-town site is proposing. Our site and the Topping site combined offer up to 110,000 square foot of retail space, and the upcoming site at the Southwest College can accommodate a variety of leisure amenities, coffee docks, but to mention a few, and a bowling alley. The currently derelict Railway Hotel and Old Cinema are also on this side of town and desperately need to be redeveloped. The developers of the Unipork site would have you believe that their proposal cannot be accommodated anywhere else in the town centre. I have just confirmed that this is untrue. They will also say that these retailers like to be beside similar type retailers, and Station Green and the other sites I mentioned are already located in an established retail location and are surrounded by box store retailers such as Curry's, Pets at Home, and McDonald's. The developers are saying they'll bring new stores to Enniskillen, but right now the only named retailer they have is The Range, and I can confirm that The Range were happy to come to Station Green because we have the planning consent they need. They cannot operate under any other planning consent, and they can't operate under bulky goods consent. And anyone who's ever visited The Range will know that at least 50% of the goods they sell are not bulky goods and compete directly with goods sold in our town centre. There is absolutely nothing this out-of-town proposal is offering that cannot be accommodated right now in the town centre, and accommodated in a way that enhances the vibrancy and vitality of our town centre. If you think there'll be no fallout from approving this site, I'm here to tell you that our site is the first casualty of the Unipork site application. We have now been stalled for over 24 months from completing our development and bringing new retailers to the town centre because the town centre cannot match the promise of extremely low rent, low rates and unlimited free car parking and any out-of-town development can offer. All the Unipork site has to offer is a leakage of jobs, footfall and retailers out of the town centre. But we have a massive opportunity here today to get this right. Saying no to this out-of-town proposal clears the way for the regeneration.
Ciara, I'm cutting across you. 30 seconds to wind up, please.
And the other vacant sites on the east side of Enniskillen town. So in conclusion, we're looking for you to uphold our town centre first planning policy, uphold the advice given in the Nexus report, which stringently warns against any out-of-town retail development until after 2030. If retail of any category is granted on this out-of-town site is a dangerous precedent which communicates...
You're out of time, Ciara. Sorry, you've been cut off. Moving on now to Michael Collins. Michael, you have 2 minutes. Michael. Michael Collins, you have 2 minutes.
So can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead. 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you everybody. I represent the IMC Cinema and again, my name is Michael Collins. As everybody is fully aware, the cinema business is under extreme pressure, and even in this last month, Cineworld, the second biggest cinema chain in the world, closed 660 cinemas as a result of the present pandemic. In the past 5 years, we have seen our own reduction of up to 15% in footfall per year. This is mainly driven by changing customer needs through streaming services such as Netflix and Amazon. However, despite this, earlier this year, the IMC site started a planning application to refurbish its existing cinema, to add 2 new screens, to add food outlets, to a total investment of between 1.5 and 2 million pounds, which in essence would achieve between 8 to 10 new jobs. However, this investment will simply not happen if another cinema gets planning approval less than a mile from your existing cinema. I would also like to point out that at this stage, the information being provided by Brunswick Movie Bowl proposing 80 new employees seems at best ambitious. As originally we had 10 pin bowling, 10 lanes, not 8, cinema, kiddie play area, hot food and cold food concession stalls. And at its peak, we employed no more than 25 employees. Presently, we have a 7-screen cinema, which is widely acceptable as the feasible size operating cinema, and we employ 20 employees. Enniskillen has a population of 12,000 people, and we would need the population.
You're out of time. Thank you very much. We'll move on now to Jonathan Stiles. Jonathan, you have 3 minutes. Jonathan?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, hear you now. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I represent the Enniskillen Business Partnership. And the Enniskillen Business Partnership represents over 100 businesses of a multiple and private nature here in Enniskillen. We have a constitution and we have a good working relationship with everybody involved in creating a better Enniskillen. Nobody cares more about Enniskillen than we do, and nobody puts more thought into Enniskillen needs than we do. We are progressive and we have a forward-thinking ideas and forward-thinking people. In a way, we are in the development business also, just like Elm Grange. The main difference is we see the Unipork site as an area that should be developed for the people of Enniskillen and not as a project that will destroy the business character of our town. However, the site has specific potential. We see it as a superb site for the Holy Trinity School much needed, as the councillors are aware. Another option is as a new site for the redevelopment of the Lakeland Forum, freeing up the original Forum site to offer further benefits for tourism, possibly a lakeside hotel maybe, who knows. It would also be a superb site for a new housing scheme for first-time buyers with space for children's parks, etc. At my last count recently, walking through Enniskillen, we had 50 empty businesses. If this scheme was built, many more would be affected. The next 18 months of COVID issues and public realm turmoil will be tough for businesses in Enniskillen. A retail park in this location is simply too far away. That's the big problem. It's simply too far away from the town centre. It creates division and will turn the town's retail core into a waste ground. And if you don't believe me, just look at Bangor, Lisburn, Coleraine, Strabane, Cavan, Sligo. Fine examples of out-of-town developments killing the town centres. We are passionate about our town. Tourists love it. The council are spending $6 million on a new public realm scheme right now. So why would you put any of that at risk? Our idea is to develop from the town centre outwards. The Nexus report suggests no out-of-town development in Enniskillen until 2030 earliest. And I would finish with the well-used town planners expression, town centre first, and it has to be town centre first. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. You finished within your time slot. Well done. Next up is Glyn Roberts. Glyn, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Listen, I think that we're delighted to be supporting our friends in the Enniskillen Business Partnership. Let me be very, very clear. This application is a brazen breach of our town centre first planning policy. And I'm absolutely amazed that they have the gall even to put this application forward, because it is so much in breach of the town centre first planning policy, a planning policy that we helped to devise. We all know the history of out-of-town retail development. Unrestricted out-of-town retail development in Northern Ireland has led to Northern Ireland having the highest shop vacancy rate in the UK and the island of Ireland. And as Jonathan has said, he hosted the likes of Strabane, and there was other towns that have been hollowed out as a result of unrestricted out-of-town retail development. And I think this application is a competing alternative town centre. It is not complementary. It will draw trade, jobs and business away from what I believe is a town centre in Enniskillen which has huge potential. And the very thought of the council even considering this application almost beggars belief. What I would say to the councillors on this committee, who are you going to stand with? Is it your local family-owned independent retailers and small business owners who make up the economy of your town? Or is it the big business, the big developers? You know, and let's be very clear here. Those small family-owned businesses, they can't afford the big legal teams, the QCs and all those experts that are online today in favour of the applicant. They can't afford that. So they look to you to stand up for them, to make sure that their interest and your town centre can move from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Glenn. Again, finished within the time. Thank you for that. I'll move on now to Christine Reeves. Christine?
Hello.
You have 5 minutes.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity on behalf of the owners and managers of the Ironside Shopping Centre. As you know, these are challenging times for town centres, and they've been compounded by the impacts of COVID-19. As a result, the retail market in town centres are considerably weaker than they were even a year ago. Vacancies are increasing and new tenants are difficult to find. Town centres need support now more than ever. Planning policy seeks to do this by adopting a town centre first approach for retail and leisure development. If development is needed, the town centre should benefit from this investment rather than be impacted by it. However, these policies can only be successful if planning applications for out-of-centre developments are properly assessed and determined. Having undertaken a detailed review of this application, it is clearly contrary to planning policy, and there are no material considerations that outweigh the very significant adverse impacts that it will have. Put simply, the application fails the sequential test. There's no quantitative or qualitative need for the development. The proposal will have a very significant adverse impact on Inniskillen town centre, and the economic benefits of the scheme have been grossly overstated, with the benefits offset by losses elsewhere in the town. The sequential test is a key part of the town centre first approach, and the SPPS requires that if a sequentially preferable site or sites are available, an application should be refused. Your emerging LP is also proposing to set a target of at least 90% of town centre uses being directed to the town centres, a target that would never be achieved if this application was approved. The applicant argues that they have complied with the sequential test and conclude there is no suitable site in the town centre. We consider that same provision can be accommodated in the centre if the scheme is disaggregated, and we retain our view that this is the correct approach. The only reason for proposing so many units on the Unipork site is to maximise the applicant's profits. The principle of town centres first cannot be sidestepped by deliberately sizing the scheme so that it is physically impossible to fit it anywhere other than out of centre. Were the outlets promoted separately, then suitable and available sites in the town centre could be identified. The approach adopted by the applicant is therefore nonsensical. It simply encourages larger out-of-centre developments in direct conflict with key planning principles and objectives. If the sequential test is properly applied, then alternative sites are available in the town centre and the application fails the sequential test. It should therefore be refused on this basis. In terms of the second policy test need, there is no quantitative need for the proposed development, retail or leisure. Council's evidence base confirms this. There is also no qualitative need. Just 2 occupiers have been named, with the rest of the floor space being speculative. Potential occupiers have been suggested, but there's no evidence that these retailers want space. Indeed, one of the suggested retailers, DW Sports, has gone into administration and has been purchased by Sports Direct. Instead, if this application is approved, the units will be offered to retailers already in the town centre. The centre will lose some of its key attractors, increasing vacancies and reducing footfall and consumer choice for those without access to a car. The lack of need will also increase the impact on the town centre, as most of the forecast turnover of at least 36 million, but we say up to 54 million, will come from town centre shops. It will not come from clawback, as there's very little of this spend is currently leaking from the town. The applicant suggests that the impact will be only 7%, and although we think it will be considerably more, even their figure is significant. For example, comparison expenditure this year is expected to decline by around 8.5%. So this would be the equivalent of a second COVID impact on the town centre. This will inevitably lead to the closure of existing businesses. Vacancies will increase and units will remain vacant. The benefits from recent public sector investment will be nullified. Approved town centre development sites will not come forward and investor confidence will be severely harmed. This represents a significant adverse impact on Inniskillen town centre, another reason for refusal. There are therefore strong policy reasons why this application should be refused, and a different decision can only be reached if there are material considerations that outweigh this considerable harm. However,
30 seconds, Christine.
The previous permission cannot be given weight as it was for a very different form of retail and a different retail climate. The benefit of job creations is overstated. These aren't new jobs, they are displaced jobs because other businesses will close. Vacant site will be off. Use of a vacant site will be offset by increased vacancies in the town centre, and there are therefore no material considerations that outweigh the conflict with policy. The application should therefore be refused.
Sorry, thank you. I now call on the 6th objector, Michael Graham. Michael, you have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. This development, I think, would be an enormous way. And in my view, the communities of Kilmaccormack and Cornagrade deserve much better than what is being proposed. Not only would it contravene every aspect of planning policy, as our objectors have so eloquently outlined, it would also contravene nearly every other public policy in Northern Ireland, namely environmental policy, by encouraging car use, which is terrible at a time when we are trying to reduce emissions. Unlike Mr. Lochry's description of the proposal as being modern, developments like are a relic of the 20th century and have been proven time and again not to work in the long term. They don't enhance town centres, they destroy them, and the evidence has been given for that. To echo Jonathan's comments, Enniskillen's town centre is sadly not as strong as Mr. Lockery would attest, with a significant number of vacant units. This was the case long before COVID. And the key point is there would be much better use of this site. The Holy Trinity Primary School example has been discussed, and indeed the Lakeland Forum. And that example, I think, would be an excellent use. If you were to move the forum to this site, you would free up a unique location for tourism purposes, such as a hotel, restaurants, and it would allow us to make full use of our unique location in Enniskillen, which is not being used at the moment. More importantly, it would allow the local community to benefit from
30 seconds, Michael.
a phenomenal new facility which delivers better social outcomes, health outcomes, and may improve life chances for young people in that community. That would be an incredible legacy for this council, and to allow this development would deliver a profoundly negative legacy, devastate the unique character of Enniskillen, and be a dreadful outcome.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll now call on the last objector, and that is Rodney Shaw. Rodney, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and councillors. This development will cause loss of light into my property. Examples, cinema, bowling alley and hotel will block both evening and morning light. The elevation draws available don't seem to show this towards my property. My property is close to 100 years old. I am concerned about the damage caused by the building work, the scale so close to the boundary, with foundations being piled possibly, and if will monitors be provided to my house. A change of look to the area on planning maps. Properties at 92 and 94 Irvinstown Road are artist impressions which shows trees in their property when in fact these trees don't exist. Concern about the increase in traffic. I have lived here for 50 years. Since the building of the new hospital in the area, there has been no improvements to the Irvinstown Road or the Cornergreen Road, but yet we are expected to take more traffic. There is planning on here for a new filling station, when a new filling station has been already passed on the opposite side of the road on the Irvinstown Road. So you're 100 metres away from an existing past filling station. As I would like to highlight, I have also a small business on this site, and it's not even on the maps. It doesn't show it on the maps. It's missing.
30 seconds, Rodney.
Yeah. Again, from other ones with the small retail premise, we are fighting against the internet in this town, and to allow this to happen is just going to kill all our family-owned shops. These multinationals don't put anything back into the local area. Our local family-run businesses do. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rodney. Finished within the time. Well done. Members, that is all the objectors presenting within the timescale, working within the confines of WebEx. Thank you very much indeed. The floor is now open for you to direct any questions to all of the objectors. If you do come in with a question, could you say who you would like to answer? Or if it's a generic one, I'll try and see who can answer on your behalf, but try and be more specific. Thank you very much. So the floor is open to members. Councillor Smith, Chris.
Thanks very much, Chair. I suppose I believe I should direct this question towards the representative for Earnside, because I think they were the ones who quoted the Solus impact figures. I suppose I get a wee bit concerned when figures are presented which implies some kind of mathematical algorithm behind it and two people coming up with two different answers. I wonder if you could maybe just try and maybe explain why their figure is lower than yours or your figure is higher than theirs. Or, well, you know, it's that discrepancy does sort of worry me and sort of make me concerned that those figures maybe are very subjective?
I will do my best.
Yeah.
There are lots of assumptions that go into any of the retail impact assessments, and it is all individual views on the market and how we see it happening. In this case, I think there are two main issues. One is the assumption as to what type of retailers would occupy the units, because that determines what their turnover would be. But the second one is to do with where would the trade come from. I mean, I mentioned there was the actual turnover forecast vary between the applicant's 36 million, and we did a couple of scenarios where it could be up to 54. But the applicants are saying that there is potential to draw a lot of trade that is currently leaking from the area back to Enniskillen. We've looked at the Nexus survey results, and there is some leakage from Enniskillen to some of the higher order centres, but generally that is sort of more likely to be sort of clothing and fashion and sort of more specialist non-food purchases. It's not the sorts of things that are going to be sold at this development. Taking the issue of bulky goods, people don't travel a long way to get a few bits of DIY. They buy it more locally. And therefore, what we are concerned about is the fact that the types of businesses that would occupy this retail park would be the ones who would be competing with, or would actually be the same units as those already in the town centre. So we forecast a higher amount of the trade would come from the town centre outlets.
Okay. Chair, if you'll allow me a supplementary, thanks. So just so I am clear what these figures are, is that a reduction in turnover or a reduction in profit or a reduction in sales numbers, or what does those percentages actually translate into?
The percentages are taken on the turnover centre. The presentation earlier gave two figures, for instance, from the applicant of an impact of 8% and 7%. The 8% was the impact on comparison or non-food sales within the town centre. The 7% was allowing for the convenience sales to be added in. So it was the impact overall. The way that the applicant has sought to present the information, though, is that they have basically said, well, this is the base year. Pre-COVID, turnover of the town centre will go up year on year as people's spend goes up year on year. And then you take the impact. And if you look, the stores in the town centre in 2025 will be taking more than it did in 2019. That is a sort of false security. Because obviously a business, even excluding inflation, a business trading in 2019 will need to increase its money, its turnover between now and 2025, because all its costs will go up. Nothing else stays still, and so that impact on turnover, the impact is on turnover, and it's whether then you have to think about could those businesses still make a profit if their turnover comes down, and of course the impact wouldn't be sort of uniform across the town centre. There will be certain businesses that would be hit harder than others. But even those who aren't directly affected have the potential to experience a loss of turnover from a decrease in general footfall and draw of the centre.
So just if you give me one clarification, just one
more.
Yeah. So just so I am 100% on the money here. What you're suggesting is that whether you take it as 7% or 8% or 17% or whatever, take it as X, that the average turnover of a business in the town will range will decrease by between 8% and 17%, depending on which figure you take, from projected? So is that including sort of, the scale with inflation, or is that from now?
The figures always exclude the effect of inflation, so that would be a real term impact. So yes, it would be expected that across the whole town centre, the businesses would take away either 7, 8, 15% less turnover than they do today.
Okay. No, thank you very much for the chance to get that all thrashed out. And thanks Christine for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that. I've no other indications. I'm going to ask again, Chris, if you could take your hand down, please. Any other members of the committee for questions to be directed to the objectors, either individually or globally? Could you please indicate now? We're all in listening mode, which is good, taking it all in. Thank you very much indeed. I'm now going to move on and give the opportunity to the applicants and agent the right of response in regard to points raised by the objectors in their presentation. Gentlemen, I'm allowing between 5 and 10 minutes. So between David and Eamon, if you want to come in, could you indicate whether you want to respond or not, please? Thank you.
I'm going to respond very briefly and then leave the rest of the time to Eamon, if that's okay. I just want to respond very briefly to what Christine Reeves said on behalf of our side, relating to the point I raised. The point she makes about the sequential test and disaggregation, the point she makes to the councillors today is precisely the point that was made to the Supreme Court in Tesco, and it was rejected roundly by the Supreme Court. So again, she's asking members to take an approach which has no sanction in law and supported law. I'd ask you just to remember what I said earlier. The second point I want to raise, just very briefly, is she tried to say the previous planning commission was irrelevant. I've not majored on that this morning, and we'll reserve our position on that. But just as a matter of brief comment, firstly, members should bear in mind that the implementation of a planning permission, according to established legal authority, is on the basis of any work which is consistent with the granted permission. It doesn't have to be building work to actually start building out the permission, but if it's work that is sanctioned by the permission, whether that's infrastructure, digging ditches, putting in access arrangements or the like, then it's implemented. And secondly, that's a material consideration as a matter of law. What members make of it, of course, is and what weight they give to it's a matter for them. But I ask them to take a much more cautious approach than Aaron's side is trying to suggest. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, not at all. Thank you very much, David. Eamon, do you have any further comments?
Just a number of points, Chairman, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
At the outset, Mrs. McChristen mentioned that the range and said the range won't operate under a bulky goods condition. This is an application for retail warehousing. We have promoted it as retail warehousing. We are approved. We'll be expecting a bulky goods condition, and the range have agreed and written a letter to say that they'll operate under a bulky goods condition. So I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that this is anything other than a bulky goods application. And if conditioned, that's what we will be accepting. There was also discussion about this setting a dangerous precedent. I'm not sure what precedent this could set, because this is the only application of out-of-town retailing or this scale in Enniskillen, or indeed Oma, as far as I'm concerned. And to flag we have, or shroud we of the issue of precedent, it has to have some status and some evidence, and there's no evidence to suggest that this will cause any precedent for other developments. There's no other developments we're aware of. Mr. Collins raised issues about his cinema. The committee needs to be careful to understand that Mr. Collins, the cinema is outside of the town centre. It does not benefit from any planning policy protection being located outside the town centre. The shops in the town centre and businesses in the town centre are protected under policy, but out of town developments are unprotected in retail policy terms. And so what appears to have happened is Mr. Collins has submitted an application after our client has submitted an application for a new cinema. What, in my experience, that is it's a reaction, a competitive reaction to up your game and provide improved facilities for the community. And so the effect of this, our application has been to create an improvement for the local people of Enniskillen. In terms of Mr. Styles' alternative suggestions for this site, well, that's not before the committee. There's no. This is an application the committee can consider on its own 2 feet. It doesn't. It's not being asked to consider whether there's alternative uses for this site. Mr. Roberts has portrayed this a case of big business versus local people. What hasn't been mentioned today is that there's over 225 letters of support, principally from local people who actually welcome and support this development. And the developer in this case is a local Tyrone businessman. Ms. Reeves describes the impact as significantly adverse impact on the town centre. At its height, the impact she is portraying is 16%. I have been acting in retailing in Northern Ireland for over 25 years, and I have never known of an application to be refused on the basis of 16% impact. Normally, the Department of Environment were more than happy to allow applications if impacts were in the region of 12%. 16% has never been a basis for refusing retail impact. Ms. Reeves says there's no quantitative or qualitative need. Well, the fact that the range and movie bowl and the developer wants to provide this is clearly evidence of a need. It's a qualitative need. The evidence we've provided from Nexus shows there is a quantitative need of additional retail spending. Where we differ is Ms. Reeves would rather that future retail spending is used almost entirely to support existing retailers, whereas our view is some of that retail spending growth can be used to support additional retailers coming to the town. The previous permission, Mr. Elvin has discussed the previous permission, but just to be very clear, the previous permission was granted as a bulky retail warehouse development with a food store. This is an application for bulky retail warehousing, so the previous permission does and remain relevant. Mr. Michael Graham said that this is contrary to all other forms of public policy in Northern Ireland. Well, the Planning Committee is being asked to deal with it in the context of planning policy. He also described that this was contrary to the sustainability. The application has been, the car parking in the application has been confined to provide 20% below required standards, and that's a matter that the council planners will be asked to make a recommendation on that to determine whether that reduction in parking is sufficient. Mr. Rodney Shaw raised some legitimate concerns about the impact on his property. I'm not going to comment on them. We would be happy to liaise with the planning officer to provide any additional information that he needs to address concerns over loss of light or construction. Those are site-specific issues that we can deal with the delegated officers, and the councillor. Just to finish up, the councillor asked the question about why is there such a range in terms of my presentation of impact and the objector's presentation of impact. And if I may say that, in my experience, to be presented with a case of a range of impacts between 8% and 14% or 8% and 16% is actually quite a narrow range for retail impact. And that is because of the approach that we have taken using base data that has been from the council's own Nexus consultants. And it's as a consequence of that we've got a fairly narrow range of impacts to be considered by the council. And as I said earlier, there's been no evidence, no decision in my knowledge that's anything over under 16% impact has been found to be unacceptable, and nevertheless significantly unacceptable. So I think that was all the points I wanted to cover, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions.
No, there's no questions at this stage in regard to that, Eamon and David. It's purely your right to rebut anything that had been raised by the objectors. And I do note I have one of the objectors wanting to come back, and I did say at the start, the objectors presented their case. They have no right of redress after the applicant and agents make comment on what they have said. So I'm going on now to item 7. as listed there, and that's the planning officer's comments in regard to the presentations made both on behalf of the applicant by the agents and on behalf of the objectors. So it's over to you, Paul. Thank you. Can you get in, Paul? Excuse us, we're just experiencing a little bit of connection problems here, but I'll get through to you.
That's me in now, Chair.
Okay, on you go, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm just going to pick up on a few points. And there's been, I suppose, recently a lot of debate in terms of the retail statement and the percentage and the varying percentage of impacts. And it's just to advise members that the retail statement is only a tool to inform any decision made. There's no magic percentage impact of where the impact is adverse on the town centre, and that just has to be considered in light of all the other evidence and information that's before the members. The test for the sequential assessment of other sites is set out within the SPPS, and that's within the background papers, and it really turns on the facts and the specifics of each case, which are key, and that's what has to be weighed up. In terms of commencement of the previous permission, that's an issue that'll be considered and weighed up in the final decision. And in terms of the amenity on the adjoining property, again, that's an issue that will be considered and weighed up in the final opinion. Just the photographs that I had presented in my slide have been taken recently, and so they're an up-to-date reflection of those properties and the site in relation to those properties. And I have nothing further to add.
Thank you very much, Paul. You actually caught me out doing something very quick, but I was listening in. Thank you very much indeed. Members, you now have the opportunity to direct any questions in regard to the observations that Paul has given at the start, and now just in regard to the presentations from both sides. So the floor is open to you to make any questions directed towards Paul in regard to what he has said. Right, I've got no indication at the moment. I'll ask again. Any members want to direct questions towards Paul? Right, in light of no questions, I take it that everybody has been listening intently, as I have. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank all the participants, that's our officers, in regard to the preparation of the papers for presentation and their discussion and presentation here. So thank you, Paul, for that. I'd like to thank the agents, and that would be David and Eamon, presenting on behalf of the applicant. And I would like to thank the objectors as listed for their presentations in regard to bringing their issues in front of the committee. As I had said during the hearing, this application, I think, is coming before the committee in December, at its December meeting, when all papers will be presented. And we thank all who have presented today in regard to the information that you provided, which will help us in our deliberation and hopefully arriving at determination at our meeting in December. That said, I am now going to call the meeting to a close and thank you all for your participation. Thank you very much indeed.